Sean P. Diddy Combs was the king of hip-hop, a billionaire mogul with global fame and untouchable influence. The day federal agents stormed his mansions and the world discovered that behind the music, power, and private jets lay a hidden empire built on secrets darker than anyone imagined. Sean P. Diddy Combs was more than a name, he was a brand. From the moment he entered the music industry in the early 90s, he moved with unstoppable ambition. He started as an intern at Uptown Records but quickly rose through the ranks, eventually founding Bad Boy Records. He signed the notorious B.I.G., and from there, his influence exploded. Hit after hit, album after album, he became a force that shaped the sound of a generation. Soon, his reach stretched beyond music. He'd launched Sean John, his fashion line, and signed lucrative deals with Ciroc Vodka and Revolt TV. His image was everywhere on billboards, in commercials, and at every major awards show. Diddy wasn't just a mogul, he was a cultural icon. But behind the designer suits and diamond chains, darker rumors lingered. For years, insiders whispered about how Diddy ran his empire. Some said he was ruthless in business, others suggested something more sinister. Former associates spoke of sudden firings, sealed legal settlements, and mysterious disappearances. There were stories of violent outbursts at parties and secret meetings behind closed doors. Journalists tried to dig deeper, but the trail always went cold. Lawsuits were quietly dropped, and witnesses seemed to vanish from the public eye. Despite the whispers, nothing stuck. Diddy remained untouchable. His charm and influence kept doors open and cameras rolling. He was often photographed with political leaders, athletes, and fellow billionaires. Whenever his name appeared in controversy, it was quickly brushed off as media exaggeration or jealousy. He was, after all, a symbol of success, someone who had climbed from Harlem streets to the top of the global entertainment industry. Still, people watched closely. Some believed that where there was smoke, there had to be fire. His inner circle grew smaller and more private. Security at his events became stricter. NDA agreements were standard for anyone who came close. Guests at his lavish parties signed papers just to step through the door. Everything about Diddy's world became more controlled, more secretive. As the years passed, he continued to thrive in public, even as critics questioned how much of his wealth and power had been built behind closed doors. He diversified his portfolio, invested in tech startups, and talked often about Black excellence and entrepreneurship. To many, he was a role model. But to a few, he was a man with too much to hide. In the end, what kept people talking wasn't just his success, it was the shadows behind it. And though the spotlight never left him, it was starting to illuminate things Diddy likely hoped would never be seen. The empire looked strong from the outside, but soon, the cracks would begin to show. It was supposed to be just another quiet morning in Los Angeles, but before sunrise, federal agents surrounded Sean P. Diddy Combs' sprawling Holmby Hills mansion. Simultaneously, a second team descended on his Miami property. Black SUVs blocked driveways, helicopters circled overhead, and armored officers poured through gates with search warrants in hand. The neighbors watched in disbelief as one of the most powerful figures in entertainment suddenly became the center of a massive federal raid. Within minutes, news stations across the country were broadcasting live. Cameras caught brief glimpses of agents carrying out boxes, hard drives, and luxury items. No one knew the full scope, but one thing was clear: this wasn't a routine investigation. Initial reports said the raid was part of a multi-agency probe into human trafficking, financial crimes, and possible drug distribution. Authorities remained tight-lipped, refusing to comment on specifics. But whispers from anonymous law enforcement insiders hinted at a much deeper operation. These weren't just accusations. They were the product of over a year of surveillance, witness interviews, and sealed indictments. The media storm exploded, and social media fed on every detail, real or imagined. Diddy's legal team immediately released a statement calling the raid a politically motivated attack and insisted he was fully cooperating. They suggested the allegations were baseless, exaggerated by people seeking money and attention, but behind the scenes, panic was spreading. Business partners went silent. Brand deals were paused. Unless friends began to distance themselves, waiting to see where things would land. In the days that followed, chilling details emerged. A private jet manifest was leaked, showing frequent flights to undisclosed islands and international cities. A former assistant, now under federal protection, reportedly turned over journals and payment records detailing what she called a secret economy run from inside Diddy's empire. She claimed the parties weren't just wild, they were operational fronts for something much darker. Her records allegedly showed money routed through shell companies, cryptic wire transfers, and photos from inside vault-like rooms where phones were confiscated and cameras were banned. One of the most explosive discoveries was a secure phone containing encrypted messages between Diddy and several unidentified individuals using aliases and coded language. Analysts believed the phone held the key to a hidden network one that crossed state lines and possibly international borders. Despite the mounting evidence, Diddy was not arrested. Not yet. Authorities said the investigation was ongoing and complex, and no official charges had been filed. But the damage had begun. Speculation turned into suspicion, and suspicion turned into fear. People who had once proudly stood beside him now hesitated to say his name. For years, Diddy had lived like a man above consequence. But after the raid, it became clear. The veil was lifting, and the truth was no longer staying buried. As the investigation deepened, the case against Sean P. Diddy Combs began to take a disturbing turn. Federal agents began calling in former employees, business partners, and guests who had attended his infamous private events. One by one, they were questioned behind closed doors. Some refused to speak, even under legal pressure. Others agreed, but only with guarantees of protection. It wasn't long before the public learned why. A former bodyguard, known in the industry for his loyalty and silence, was found dead in a downtown Atlanta hotel room just days before his scheduled testimony. The official statement cited a drug overdose. The autopsy report painted a different picture. Traces of a rare toxin were found in his system. Though ruled inconclusive, the timing was too suspicious to ignore. It sent shockwaves through the case. Authorities tightened security around other potential witnesses. The fear was real. Then came the first big break. A retired music executive, long thought to have disappeared from the scene, surfaced with a trove of documents. He claimed that Diddy had used several business ventures to launder large sums of money through offshore accounts. The funds allegedly passed through shell companies registered in the Caribbean and Eastern Europe. What raised eyebrows wasn't just the scale of the transactions, but the recipients, some with alleged ties to organized crime and global trafficking networks. More people stepped forward. Former creative director provided a diary she had secretly kept during her 3 years at Bad Boy Entertainment. In it, she described coded instructions, secret guest lists, and unusual requests for international travel. One entry described a last-minute flight to a private island, arranged under a different name and paid in cash. Another listed a breakdown of hush payments made to unnamed individuals, some of whom were identified only by initials. An ex-girlfriend of Diddy's, known for staying silent in the past, finally agreed to testify. She described years of manipulation, coercion, and threats. According to her, Diddy had maintained surveillance on those closest to him, often keeping files with compromising material to ensure their loyalty. Her testimony claimed he once staged a fake legal threat just to test someone's loyalty. She said people were trapped financially, emotionally, and sometimes physically. The most explosive claim came from a disgraced record producer who said he had helped destroy evidence. He alleged that footage from a private party showing disturbing scenes had once been edited, wiped, and replaced. He claimed there were multiple copies, one of which, he hinted, might still exist. The stories didn't all match perfectly, but the themes were consistent: fear, secrecy, and control. It was no longer just about financial crime. Testimonies hinted at a broader system of silence, one that had protected Diddy for decades. Now, that system was crumbling, and the truth was seeping through the cracks. The trial of Sean P. Diddy Combs began under a media spotlight brighter than anything he had faced in his decades-long career. The courthouse in New York was surrounded by news vans, camera crews, and curious onlookers, all eager to catch a glimpse of the man who once defined an era of success and luxury. Security was tight, with metal detectors, restricted access, and federal marshals stationed at every entrance. The world was watching. Inside the courtroom, prosecutors came prepared with a meticulously organized case. They opened with an overview of the financial records, encrypted communications, and sworn testimonies that painted Diddy not just as a participant in criminal activity, but as the mastermind. They showed charts connecting shell companies to illegal payouts and used digital forensic evidence to explain how money was laundered through businesses that appeared legitimate on the surface. The jury listened intently as timelines were laid out and coded text messages were decoded. The centerpiece of the prosecution's strategy was its list of witnesses. One by one, former employees took the stand, their identities protected in some cases. They described a culture of fear, complete loyalty, and swift punishment for disobedience. Some described how Diddy would use surveillance, manipulation, and financial control to ensure silence. One assistant claimed she had once been ordered to destroy a laptop full of sensitive footage. Another said she was sent overseas with suitcases of cash and warned never to speak about it again. In response, the defense fought hard. They painted the witnesses as disgruntled former employees and opportunists, hoping to profit off Diddy's fame. They accused prosecutors of crafting a narrative based on speculation, not hard proof. Diddy's lawyers brought in expert witnesses who questioned the authenticity of some documents and suggested that evidence may have been doctored or taken out of context. They emphasized his charitable work, his clean criminal record, and his history of lifting others up in the entertainment world. The trial took a chaotic turn when a key prosecution witness disappeared days before their testimony. Authorities confirmed that the witness had boarded a private flight to an undisclosed location and had since gone silent. Speculation surged. Was it fear, a payoff, a deeper conspiracy? The judge ordered proceedings to continue, but the disruption shook the courtroom. Despite setbacks, the prosecution pressed on. They presented a final bombshell, a hidden hard drive found in a storage unit linked to one of Diddy's companies. It allegedly contained raw, unedited videos from events previously dismissed as rumors. The contents were not shown publicly, but their description was enough to leave the courtroom stunned. Faces turned pale. The jury sat in silence. What had begun as whispers and speculation was now documented, structured, and laid bare for all to see. Diddy, who once orchestrated chart-topping hits and million-dollar deals, sat silently behind a table, watching as the empire he built was turned against him piece by damning piece. After more than 2 months of intense testimony, cross-examinations, and mounting public pressure, the jury finally returned to the courtroom. The atmosphere was tense. Reporters packed every available seat, and millions watched live broadcasts from around the world. 12 jurors, after 18 hours of deliberation, delivered their verdict. Sean P. Diddy Combs was found guilty on multiple counts of racketeering, conspiracy, witness, intimidation, and obstruction of justice. He was acquitted of the most serious charge, human trafficking. But the weight of the remaining convictions was enough to end his career and possibly his freedom. The judge set sentencing for the following month. Bail was denied. Diddy was led out of the courtroom by U.S. Marshals, expressionless and silent. In that instant, decades of fame, wealth, and power collapsed. The man who once dominated music, fashion, and culture had become a convicted felon. News outlets ran the footage on a loop, analyzing every step he took. Headlines screamed the downfall of a legend. Social media erupted with both outrage and celebration. Some called it justice, others called it a setup. But no one could deny the finality of what had just occurred. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Corporate partners severed ties. Streaming platforms removed his music from major playlists. His companies were placed under federal review, with several top executives resigning or facing their own investigations. Civil lawsuits piled up. Former employees, alleged victims, and business rivals all came forward, emboldened by the conviction. Banks froze assets. International travel was restricted. His personal brand, once synonymous with success and style, became radioactive overnight. But the story didn't end there. Weeks after the trial, a confidential testimony was leaked to the press. It came from a sealed portion of the trial that had been kept private due to ongoing investigations. The testimony named several high-profile celebrities, politicians, and international businessmen who were allegedly connected to the same criminal network. Some had attended the same exclusive parties. Others had financial ties to Diddy's shell companies. The leak set off a chain reaction. Federal authorities expanded the investigation. Search warrants were issued for properties in multiple states. At least 3 other public figures were subpoenaed. One foreign diplomat was stripped of immunity. The Department of Justice launched a separate task force to follow new leads tied to human trafficking and financial crimes across international borders. What had started as a trial against one man was now unraveling a hidden world of elite corruption and silence. In the end, Diddy's trial became more than a legal battle. It exposed how fame and money could mask dangerous truths. It forced the public to question how many others were protected by influence, and how many secrets had been buried in plain sight. The fall of one icon shook the very foundations of an industry, and the ripples were only just beginning.